And now we're going to read chapter 12, which is called A Disappointing Trip. Lights out! Each night at 9, the call rang out, and a nurse flipped the switch, darkening our room. We rarely protested. Sometimes we talked for a while in the dark, but most nights we were ready to go to sleep. Breakfast arrived early, and the struggle to do ordinary activities was really tiring. On the night of my visit from Dr. Beavis, however, we talked for a long time, sharing memories of doctors and nurses and treatments. These memories led to talk about when we got polio and how we first learned what was wrong with us. Dorothy said, "I was sick for 3 days before my parents could get me into town for a doctor, and by then my legs were paralyzed. And I had trouble breathing. When I got to the hospital, I went in the iron lung right away, and they couldn't start the hot packs or muscle stretching until I came out. There was no hint of regret about this delay. Sweet Dorothy simply stated the facts and accepted them." Renee and Shirley told similar stories of not getting medical help until after they were paralyzed, and of the time an iron lung delayed the Kenny treatments. "It didn't matter when they brought me to the hospital," Alice said. "The Kenny treatments weren't used when I got polio." "You never had hot packs?" I asked. "Or physical therapy?" "Nope." My first reaction was, "Lucky you, no torture time," but I instantly realized it wasn't lucky at all. Alice might not have had drop foot if she had received hot packs and stretching. She might have been able to stand or even walk. I wondered what my condition would be like if I hadn't received the Sister Kenny treatments. Would my hands be deformed from permanently tight muscles like those of the patients that I've seen? Would my legs be withered from disuse? Would I, like Shirley, be unable to sit up for more than an hour? We also talked about our homes and our families, and about what we missed the most. Shirley said, "I miss my grandma. When I was little, she used to sing me to sleep." Alice said, "I'll sing you to sleep," and she began to sing, "Rock-a-bye baby on the treetop." This was the first time I heard Alice sing. She had a clear, strong soprano voice. After listening to Alice's song, nobody said another word. We didn't want to break the mood of her lullaby. The next night, after lights out, I said, "Alice, I know how to harmonize. If you sing soprano on some songs, I'll sing alto." Alice sang shine on, Harvest Moon, up in the sky. I chimed in with the harmony. I ain't had no lovin' since January, February, June, July. Dorothy giggled at the lyrics. Alice and I sang on. My mother's family used to go on picnics, and as dusk fell, all of the aunts, uncles, and cousins would sit around the campfire singing. Mother always sang as she worked around the house too, and when I was small, she often sang songs to entertain me. Whenever my family traveled, we sang in the car as a way to pass the time, because music had always been a part of my life. I knew all of the words to many songs. Alice, whose main source of entertainment for years was listening to the radio, knew many songs too. Dorothy and Renee also loved to sing. Because Shirley's breathing was shallow, the rest of us couldn't hear her sing, but we knew that she liked to try. From then on, every night after lights out, we sang in the dark. We sang Blue Skies, and I've Been Working on the Railroad, and You Are My Sunshine. We sang rounds of Row, Row, Row Your Boat, and Three Blind Mice. One night, we sang longer than usual, doing all of our favorite songs and thinking of new ones that we hadn't done before. After more than an hour of this, Dorothy remarked, "I'm hungry." "So am I," said Renee. "Hold everything," I said. "Food is on the way." "You can't turn on the light," Alice said. "The nurses are going to see." "I don't need to turn on a light." "You're going to get up in the dark," squeaked Shirley. "I don't need to see. I can feel the wheelchair. I know where the food is." I got in my wheelchair, fished out a box of cookies, and made the rounds of other beds in the dark. I felt daring and heroic, and only slightly guilty. "Thanks," whispered Renee. "Oh, you saved my life," whispered Dorothy. "I was starving." "Me too," said Alice. Shirley didn't say anything, but she took 2 cookies and ate them. I parked Silver, climbed back in bed, and was munching on peanut butter cookies when the door opened and a nurse peeked in. There wasn't a sound in room 202, not even chewing. December shivered in, and Miss Ballard told me that my parents had asked permission to take me home for an overnight visit. "Do I get to go?" I asked. "It isn't usually done," she told me, "but you're getting along well and your parents want to try it. If you want to go, I'll give you permission." "Well, of course I want to go," I said. "Why wouldn't I?" "Well, it's going to be hard to get around home," she said. I don't care. When do I leave? The arrangements were made for the following weekend. I was to be picked up at noon on Saturday and returned Sunday evening. Even though Miss Ballard didn't usually work on Saturday, she was there when my parents arrived. She had written detailed instructions about what I could and could not do. Be careful getting her into the wheelchair, she warned. Be sure the brakes are locked or it's going to scoot away from her. Don't let her get too tired. She shouldn't have any visitors besides your immediate family, and she needs to go to bed by 9 o'clock. And Miss Ballard, Mother interrupted, she is our daughter. We will take good care of her, I promise. Miss Ballard nodded and kept quiet, but she looked nervous as I was helped from the wheelchair onto the back seat of our green Oldsmobile car. Sunlight glinted on the snow, and the fresh air smelled wonderful. The other girls had told me that in warm weather they were wheeled around the gardens, but since I arrived, it was too cold to go outside. It was a 2-hour drive. Seatbelts were not yet used in cars, so there was nothing to help me stay upright. I had never realized how much I depended on my leg and back muscles to keep my balance. The motion made me tilt from side to side, and I was unable to steady myself. When we went around a curve, I had to grab the armrest and hang on to prevent myself from falling over. My parents were not aware of my problem, and I didn't tell them. I wanted to be well enough to go home for good, and if I admitted how weak I was, we would all know I wasn't well enough. By the time we got home, I was so tired from the effort of trying to stay upright, I could barely make it to my wheelchair. Our house has 2 front steps. As I pushed my wheelchair up the sidewalk to the front door, the steps loomed in front of me, like Mount McKinley. How was I going to get to the house? Dad realized my predicament. He grabbed the handles of my chair and turned it around so I faced the street. Then, with great effort, he pulled me up the steps. I couldn't brace my feet against the footrest because I had so little strength in my legs. I gripped my arms of the wheelchair and hoped he would not dump me over. Silver balked when it was time to cross the threshold. Dad yanked. The sudden jolt pitched me forward. I clutched the chair to keep myself from tumbling face first. It was great to see Grandpa. Although when he saw the wheelchair, he looked so unhappy, and then I felt that I needed to apologize to him. BJ didn't care whether I could walk or not. He barked and ran in circles and slurped my hands. Mother had prepared all of my favorite foods: macaroni and cheese, green beans, Waldorf salad, and for dessert, cream puffs. Mother's cream puffs were 6 inches across, filled with whipped cream, and topped with homemade hot fudge sauce. I always requested them for birthdays and special company. I was unable to push my wheelchair onto the carpeting. Dad had to push me into the dining room. The arms of my wheelchair were too high to fit under the table, so I had to be helped into a regular chair. Once there, I couldn't slide the chair forward. By the time I was in place, I was too discouraged to eat anything. The first floor of our house had a tiny half bath consisting of a toilet and a sink. My wheelchair didn't fit in it. To get the chair close enough to the toilet, I had to leave the door open. There was no bar on the wall to hold on to like there is in Sheltering Arms, so I needed to get off the toilet, and the lack of privacy just really embarrassed me. Since going upstairs was out of the question, I slept on a cot in the living room. I had longed to come home, but now that I was there, it really wasn't much fun. Home wasn't the same if I couldn't sleep in my own room, use the bathroom by myself. It wasn't the same when I could sit down at the table without any help. I felt like a stranger in those familiar rooms, and when it was time to go to sleep, I wished I had someone to sing with. In the morning, I practiced one of my piano lessons and discovered that my foot could no longer work the sustain pedal. When BJ brought his rag toy to me, I wasn't strong enough to play tug, as I used to. My friend Karen called, but when the phone rang, I couldn't move my chair across the carpet to answer it. I had to wait for Grandpa to push me. At noon, it began to snow. Dad and Mother decided we should leave early, just in case the roads were icy. I didn't object. I was ready to get back to the hospital. Trying to get along in the normal world was too hard. I still needed more help than my well-meaning family could provide. The ride was even more tiring this time because I was weary at the start from the effort and excitement of my time at home. Once again, I clung to the armrest and struggled to keep my balance in the back seat. Because of the snow, it took longer than usual to get back to Minneapolis. I grew more uncomfortable every minute. With relief and gladness, I returned to the welcoming embrace of the Sheltering Arms. Miss Ballard questioned me at length on Monday morning. When I confessed that I had been glad to come back, she smiled ruefully and said, "I was afraid of that, but I had to let you try. Silver almost threw me, I said, going up the steps to my silly house. Miss Ballard looked horrified and covered her ears with her hand. I don't want to hear about it, she said. And that's the disappointing trip. So tell me, what was the disappointing trip? What sorts of thoughts do you have in your head? And what kind of feelings do you have in your heart?